everyone, welcome back to the Bible in a Year read through. Today we are going to be reading through a couple different parts of the New Testament, specifically within the Gospels, and this is where we see that a lot of these stories are going to overlap as we read through them. A lot of these accounts are going to have very similar details and very similar stories told through different perspectives. So some of the things that we see throughout these readings is that Jesus heals the paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda. There we go, Bethesda. And in this, he explains his connection to the Father and his authority through the Father that he has here on earth to do miracles and healings and things of that nature. And then when he is questioned about it, he talks about how the Pharisees would study the scriptures, but they don't understand them with the depth that they really should. They study the words and they know the words and they can recite them and regurgitate them, but they don't truly understand what the scriptures are about, because all of the scriptures in reality point to Jesus, who is the Messiah. So this is where we see Jesus heals and then explains his authority and his connection to the Father, and then explains his connection to the scriptures and how easily they can be misunderstood when you're not seeing the truth behind them. And then we see the disciples go through a field and they pick grain on the Sabbath. Now the Sabbath is a holy day, a day where no work is to be done. It's a 24-hour period of rest and total dependence and reliance on God. This is where, we take a step back, we realign ourselves with the Father, and we worship and we lean into him. So, we see here the disciples are doing work. They're picking grain on the Sabbath, and they're questioned for this. They say, why do your disciples pick grain on the Sabbath? And Jesus refers them to a story in the Old Testament about David and his men eating sacred bread on the Sabbath. And, he kind of explains that Sabbath is made for the man and not man for the Sabbath, meaning that in Genesis, in the story of creation, God does work for 6 days, and then on the seventh day, he rests. He takes time to be with his creation. And not because God needed rest. God never sleeps. God never rests. God doesn't need it, but we do. And he really set a precedent for us and set an example of how to align our lives, how to align ourselves to truly get the most out of life that we can. We so easily keep going and keep going and keep going until we burn out. And that is no way to live. And where in that does that leave room for dependence on God? For God as our provider. We don't need to work 7 days a week if we know that God is going to make up for the lack of work that we have. But truly, there is no lack in God. I lack nothing because the Lord is my shepherd, right? Amen to that. So we also see that Jesus heals the man with a shriveled hand on the Sabbath in another story. And again, they bring it back to you're doing work on the Sabbath. And Jesus says, if you had a sheep that fell into a pit on the Sabbath day, would you leave him there till the next day, or would you go out and would you rescue him from that pit? And of course, knowing that this is an agriculture kind of society, of course you'd go and help your poor little sheep that's stuck in a hole, right? Doesn't matter what day it is. Well, that's how Jesus feels. He feels that this is a sheep in need of help. This is someone who has been walking with this injury for so many years. Who cares what day it is? He is free. He is restored. They're not focused on the healing. They're focused on the legality of the Sabbath, which again should be made for us to realign ourselves with God and to worship God, which in that moment was a missed opportunity to worship the Messiah and the miraculous things that he was doing. So there is such a cool theme of, the Sabbath and aligning ourselves with God and not missing the reality of what the scriptures say, to really know the scriptures and to know who Jesus is and to know his authority and to know our authority through him, which we will learn more about as the disciples learn their authority through the power of Jesus. Jesus is our hope. Jesus is our rock. Jesus is everything that we need. So take some time today and set aside that time to just rest in his presence, to really know him, to spend some time with him. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's a Sabbath day, a Saturday, a Sunday. Every day should be another opportunity to worship the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and to spend some time in his presence. I hope this blessed you today. Have a great day.